In the province of Hunan, China, an old story has been told for centuries. A story of a family stalked by something they couldn't see, couldn't touch, and couldn't reason with. A story that begins like a haunting and ends like a war. But before we begin, if you're drawn to stories with mystery, meaning, and the otherworldly, to legends passed down as truth, then this is the channel for you. I share new stories each week, drawn from folklore, forgotten history, and strange events that linger at the edge of belief. So tap the like button and subscribe with all notifications on so you never miss what's next. Let's begin. During the early years of the Qing Dynasty, a wealthy merchant was away on a long trading journey, leaving his wife alone with their 10-year-old son and an elderly cook. Life was ordinary until one autumn night. The wife dreamed that a man came into her bed, lay with her, and the two were intimate. The warmth and weight of him felt real. She woke with a start, only to see, in the dim lamplight, a small man with strange eyes standing beside her. Before she could move, he was gone, vanishing without the door opening. Her heart pounded, her skin cold. She told no one. The next evening, she asked the cook and her son to stay in her room. Past midnight, when they had both fallen asleep, she began muttering in a low, strange tone. The cook awoke and called out. A shadow at the front of her bed jerked and fled. From that night on, the wife had her son and the cook stay in the room with her. Fearing the dark, she would keep a candle burning and kept warning her son not to sleep too deeply. A few nights later, when both the cook and the boy dozed off against the wall, they woke to find her gone. The boy searched the house and found her naked, asleep in another room, eyes vacant. By day, her behavior turned erratic, piling stones against windows, smearing mud into the cracks, smoothing it with the kitchen cleaver, while ignoring all protests from her son and the cook. The son began to watch her more closely at night. One evening, with a knife hidden in his robe, he sat in darkness until her muttering began. He quietly got up and crept to the doorway, but there was nothing there. He stepped aside when something small and furry from beneath the bed burst forward toward the door. He swung the knife and sliced off 2 inches of its tail. Blood dripped into the floor. He tried to go back to sleep, though he lay awake for hours, replaying what he had seen, wondering if the tail he had cut was proof of something far worse. When the first light of dawn crept through the window, he rose quietly and traced the blood droplets across the courtyard, through the back gate, and over the wall into the garden of a wealthy family named He. The trail wound through dew-wet grass and past silent pavilions before fading among the shadowed edges of an overgrown koi pond. That night, the shadow didn't return, but his mother lay pale, barely breathing. Days later, the merchant returned to find his wife cursing him like an intruder. The son told him everything. Terrified, the father brought a doctor, but his wife refused the medicine, spitting it out, hurling insults so vicious they startled even her husband. It became a daily battle, boiling herbs while she was outside, disguising bitter flavors from the medicine in sweetened tea, hiding powdered remedies in soup and rice porridge. They had to work in whispers, timing each attempt for the moment she was distracted. For a brief time, these efforts seemed to take hold, until one night she vanished again, and was eventually found sleeping in the ancestral hall, her hair matted with sweat, and her nails were tearing at lacquered floor as if trying to dig her way out of this world. Doors locked against her would shudder, their bolts sliding open with a slow, deliberate scrape, as though drawn by an invisible hand. A Taoist priest was summoned, an older man in travel-stained robes, his eyes sharp with practiced focus. He traced talismans in the air, chanting until his voice cracked, and burned strips of yellow paper whose ashes drifted toward her like moths. The scent of sandalwood thickened the air, yet nothing changed. Her muttering continued, her body twisting as though wrestling with something unseen. When the rites failed, he left in silence, leaving the family with more fear than hope. The father began to despair. One moonlit evening, the sun crept into the neighbor's garden, hiding among the long grass. Two men of the He family arrived, drinking together, served by a long-bearded man in a brown coat. Though the servant poured their wine and moved with practiced ease, the boy sensed a tightness in his shoulders, as if he feared them, but dared not show it. They spoke in low voices. The son caught only one phrase: "Tomorrow, bring white wine." As they shifted in the lantern light, the boy's eyes widened. One of the men, leaning back in his chair, had a tail curling against the ground behind him. The next morning, in the market, with his father, the boy spotted a foxtail hanging from a hat shop. He begged until his father bought it. Not long after, his father became absorbed in haggling over a shipment of silk with a pair of loud-voiced traders. While his attention was locked on the bargaining, the boy slipped a hand into his purse, eased out a few coins, and backed away into the crowd. He darted across the street to a wine cellar, purchased a jug of white wine, and hid it under his cloak before slipping back unnoticed. Later, accompanying his father to visit his uncle in the city, he casually asked his aunt how they dealt with rodents in the storehouse. She brought out a small ceramic jar of poison, explaining its use. Before they left, while the adults were deep in conversation, the boy quietly took the entire ceramic jar with him and hid it beneath his robe. After returning home, when no one was looking, he poured the poison into the wine and sealed it away. The boy ate lunch quickly, then slipped away to keep an eye on the gate of the He family estate. Hours passed before he saw the long-bearded servant emerge and start walking toward the market. Staying far enough behind to remain unnoticed, he followed him through the winding streets until the crowd thickened. In the market, the boy pretended to bump into him and apologized, claiming to be from out of town, traveling with his family. Studying the man's face, he remarked that he looked familiar and asked if he worked for the He family. When the servant admitted he did, the boy leaned closer and confided that he was a fox himself, adding that his family had special white wine he would like the servant to deliver to his masters. The servant's eyes lit up with interest. This was a perfect coincidence, as his masters had just asked the day before for white wine. The boy then lifted his robe slightly to reveal the foxtail he had purchased from the hat shop that he then attached to the back of his pants so it looked like he had a foxtail, convincing the servant that he was actually a fox boy. Relaxing a little, the servant went on to say that his masters were brothers. One had bewitched a woman who was the wife of a nearby merchant. He chuckled, recalling how the merchant's son had cut off his master's tail, leaving him bedridden for 10 days before he resumed his spells. That night, the wife slept more soundly than she had in months, her breathing deep and even. The boy lay awake, sensing that something had shifted. Before dawn's first light, he slipped from his bed and crept toward the He garden. There, in the arbor, he saw 2 foxes sprawled lifeless on the ground, their fur matted and still. One's tail bore the unmistakable scar from his knife, dried blood crusting the wound. The wine jug lay tipped on its side, a dark stain in the grass beneath it. The sight explained everything. The spell had been broken from their death, and that was why his mother had slept in peace. Heart pounding, he hurried home and woke his father, leading him back to the arbor. The merchant stood still in silence, taking in the scene, and then looked at his son with a dawning realization of what he had done. Peace returned, but it was not a victory without cost. The wife's clarity of mind came back, but her body wasted away. She coughed blood, her skin paper thin. Each breath seemed to draw her further from the world. The son sat beside her in the final days, holding her hand as if his will alone could keep her here. But one winter night, her breathing stilled. The death hollowed the house. Though the son had defeated the foxes, he felt no triumph, only a sharpened awareness of the shadows that lurked in the world. His father, proud of his cunning, began training him in riding and archery. But the boy's mind was fixed on something more. That night had planted a purpose in him, a vow to hunt down and destroy the dark forces that preyed on the living. Years later, he would rise to command troops as a general. His strategies, shaped by that childhood battle, his courage, tempered by grief. His campaigns were renowned for clever deceptions, sudden feints, and traps sprung from patience and observation. He was relentless against border tribes whispered to practice dark sorcery, striking at night and dismantling their power. In time, his name was spoken not only as a great general, but in certain secret circles as a monster hunter, feared by all who trafficked in the shadows. This story comes from 聊斋志异, or Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, collected over 300 years ago by scholar Pu Songling. We see how courage and wit can overcome even the most insidious evils, but every victory has its price, and sometimes that price is paid by those we most wish to protect. Now, before you go, if you'd like to see more stories like this and are willing to help me grow the channel, make sure that you like this video and check that you're subscribed with all notifications on. Also, please leave a comment, even just a smiley face, which helps boost it in the algorithm. But to really help grow the channel, sharing these videos with friends and family signals that the channel is worth recommending, and YouTube will push it to an even wider audience. I love telling these stories, but for me to continue, the channel needs to grow, and you are part of that growth. Every share, like, and comment gives me the chance to bring more of these tales to life. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.